Hello people of the internet, I'm Nico and today I'm back with the 2014 Toyota Sienna minivan, the ultimate family hauler. Now, you can get these nowadays for maybe $16,000 to $25,000, but originally, this one specifically, the LE, which was the most basic model you could get of the Toyota Sienna, was $30,490. Now let's go on to an actual overview. Before I dive into the interior and give a more in-depth review of all the safety tech and convenience features that the Sienna has, I want to start off with the engine, which is Toyota's 3.5-liter V6. They use this in the Camry and the Tacoma, as well as various other models, and it produces 266 horsepower and 245 pound-feet of torque. That means that despite this being your average family hauler that is normally used to take your kids to soccer practice, it actually can tow 3,500 pounds, which should be enough for your average Joe to go to Lowe's and get some plywood to build a shed, assuming he can afford it with the prices nowadays. Now, a strong engine does unfortunately mean not quite as good fuel economy, though it's not too bad. 18 in the city and 25 on the highway with a combined of 21 mpg, that's according to the EPA. Real world, I've seen sort of 29 on the highway at times, though obviously that depends on the exact conditions of the highway, how steep it is, temperature, yada yada yada, but typically it's not too bad, especially considering the gas prices we have in the US. Now on the inside of the Sienna, I want to start off with storage, which, as it's a minivan, is kind of the premise of the entire vehicle. Now, to start it off, you get cup holders, obviously. You have two right here, very nice size, and obviously usable for all your drinks. You have more cup holders here, though it's not quite as roomy, but roomy enough to hold most of whatever you want to drink. You also get your usual stuff here. You have your glove box, you have another kind of glove box above it, and you obviously have your door panel storage on either side, and a little hidden cubby in the front that is currently filled with garbage because I didn't bother to clean the rest of the interior. You obviously get a massive center console, as well as more room here to do whatever with. You have a little storage tray in here, and you have a little tiny cubby in which you can find the universal remote for your garage opener. And then, best part, up here you obviously get a sunglasses holder, but if you do it right, it also doubles as a mirror so you can see all the kids in the back who are probably acting up because they're kids. Those little demons. Now, the other premise of a minivan is obviously that it has to carry a lot of people, and obviously you'd want the people in the vehicle, as well as yourself presumably, to be very safe. And this minivan is of course no exception. You get with this minivan, the most basic model by the way, or I should say one of the most basic models, you get auto delay off headlamps, dual front side mounted airbags, as well as airbags that go for the second row and the third row, head mounted specifically. You get front seatbelt pretensioners, electric brake force distribution, stability control, traction control, and ABS, which are standard features in basically every car nowadays. And you get emergency brake assist, as well as various other things. And now that your mind is at ease that this car is actually very safe, you'll want some nice amenities to go along with that and make your ride more comfortable. And the Sienna, of course, takes care of that. You get a 6-speaker sound system with a aux port and USB port down here. There's a little rubber flap that you just lift up, and then you have access to the ports. You also have a little cigarette lighter down here. You obviously get a radio and CD, and this car actually has Bluetooth. Though being a 2014 model and not a touchscreen, it is one of the most infuriating Bluetooth systems I've ever used in my life, and I genuinely mean that. I would prefer to listen to the radio than try and use the Bluetooth system. Now, with that aside, you also get cruise control, which is not the adaptive version, sadly, but you do get it. There's a little controller here on the right side of the steering wheel, so you can adjust the speed a little bit and then obviously turn it on and off. You get 3-zone climate control, actually. Driver's side, passenger side, you have all the controls right here. You have a dial for the automatic climate control, which will control the driver's side, or you can use it to do the whole car at once. You get passenger temperature adjustability right here, and then you have controls in the rear above the driver's side passenger seat where you can adjust the temperature in the back. You also get steering wheel controls for the audio system and telephone, and you get power windows. Obviously you get them in the front seat, but the rear seat windows, the sliding door ones, those are actually power windows as well. And you obviously get rear sunshades, which is a very nice touch for children, keeps the light out of their eyes since they are more sensitive to that. As for the driver's seat, it is power operated, 8-way, which is a very nice touch. You have your normal up-down motion, forward-back, the tilting of the backrest, and you get power lumbar support, which is a very nice touch. The passenger seat, however, is not quite as fortunate. It's all manual. You get a little bar here at the front where you can adjust how far forward you sit, and you have a lever on the side to adjust the tilt. Sadly, no lumbar support, but I can live without it. You can get leather seats in this car, though it was a very expensive option, close to $2,000 to get leather seats that were also heated, admittedly. Just leather seats was a little bit cheaper, but close to $2,000 for heated leather seats. All right, in the back of the Sienna now, and as you can see, there is tons of room for me. Lots of headroom, lots of legroom. I can basically lay down back here, which, if I move the seat back even further, and then recline it with the 2 levers that you get on the side of it, I just about can, and now I'm about as comfortable as I can be. This is like a Mercedes Maybach back here, though with cheap plastic and cloth seats rather than leather, but it's still not too bad back here. You get the sunshades that I mentioned earlier. Just pull them up from the sill here. There's a little rubber tab, and you can just lift it up. It clips right into place on these little hooks. You also get dome lights, which is a very nice touch, and you get some climate control vents. And as I mentioned earlier, with the whole 3-zone climate control, you get the controls up here behind the driver's seat. You get fan speed on the left, temperature on the right, there's a little display, and then you can also change the mode and turn it on automatic. You also get cup holders here in the middle, and you get some cup holders here out of the center console, and a little storage cubby right there. You do get storage nets here on the back of the seats, but they are kind of covered up with the seat covers, which kind of happens. But yeah, it's quite nice back here. Now, before I get to the 3rd row seats, I should mention that this specific minivan is actually the 8-seater version, which would mean that normally you have the 3 seats that lift up from the back, you have 3 here in the middle, and 2 up front, obviously. But if you look here, there's no seat at the moment. That's because it normally lives in the back in a little cubby, and you have to put it in place, which is actually, admittedly, a little bit annoying. And it's also, as you can see, not a very wide seat, and it's not a particularly comfortable one, though it does legally count as a 3rd seat, which is kind of annoying to put into place. Oh shoot, I did it wrong. Pull the tab, lift it out. The important part is to get it up into the slot next to the driver's side 2nd row seat. Put it in place, and now you have your 3rd seat, which I can fit in, but it's kind of tight, I'll admit, and not the most comfortable seat in the world, though I do still get the same amount of legroom and headroom that I normally would get in the 2nd row. Just, it's a little bit pinched, even for someone as skinny as me. Alright, finally in the back of the Sienna, and I want to touch on 2 major components of it. Firstly is the cargo capacity, which, as it's a minivan, is obviously fairly vast, and also the 3rd row seats and how you get them up and how you put them back down. Now, as for the cargo capacity, you do get 150 cubic feet in its maximum setting, so you'd have to remove the 2nd row seats and have the 3rd row seats down to get the full 150 cubic feet, which, by the way, for context, is 5.4 cubic feet more than the current Chevy Suburban full-sized SUV, which is frankly quite impressive, I'll be honest, considering it's a much larger vehicle than this, but you do still get more storage. That's the benefit of a minivan. When you have all the seats up, however, you only get some 39.1 cubic feet of storage capacity, which is a tad bit less than the full-size Suburban, but it's still more than enough room for whatever you want to carry. And then in this setting, which is probably what most people will have it in, I don't know the exact figure, but as you can see, it's very vast. With myself as kind of scale, I'm 5'11" and I have very long legs. But as you can see, I can sit sideways with my legs fully extended and tons of headroom. So more than enough room for you to carry mountain bikes or whatever you want to put in the back, actually. Now, as for the third row seats, it is a fairly simple process to put them up. 2 steps. You have a lever right here and you have a strap right here labeled 1 and 2, and it corresponds to a little diagram that they have very nicely put on the back of the seat. Now, you just lift up on the lever, put it in place, and then once it's locked, you'll hear the click. You can use the lever or the strap and adjust the exact angle of it, and then Velcro it back into place, and then you've got your seat up. Then you just, pull up the headrest, and then you're good to go. Now, to get it back down, very simple process. Pull on the lever again, pull it back, and it'll sink back into its original position, and then you've got access to basically anything you want to put in back here. Maybe the moon, if you're, a character from Despicable Me. Now behind the wheel of the Toyota Sienna, and truth be told, it's not too bad. Oh my god, I look pale with the sunlight in my face. Yeah, it drives exactly as a minivan does and how you would presumably expect it to drive. Obviously it's very large, so it's not going to be the best handling vehicle on earth, and it's not really made for that either, though it gets around the turns perfectly fine and it stays quite a bit flatter than you might expect, but it's obviously not a sports car like that Camaro that just passed. But yeah, it's very comfortable. It's a great daily driver if you want to put up with the size, which obviously you kind of have to deal with if you want the massive amount of storage space that you get. I think the Chevy Suburban goes for like $50,000 to $70,000 nowadays, and this, when it was brand new, was $30,000 to about $40,000, depending on what trim level you got. And nowadays you can get these for some 18 to 20 grand most of the time. This particular minivan does not have blind spot monitoring, and I don't believe that any of the Siennas got them, or at least you had to go up to the higher trim levels, the Limited, the XLE, stuff like that. And these mirrors, while they are very large, they do not cover your blind spot worth a crap. And I've actually gotten into a situation where I very nearly changed lanes into someone else because I couldn't see them in my blind spot. So do be wary. I would get like some kind of little curved mirror thing that you can like put in next to the door, so you can actually see what's in your blind spot, because anything can disappear. Even this massive Silverado that was just passed by me, I literally could not see it in my mirror. It was just completely gone. So every single one was only 3.5 liter V6 and available with all-wheel drive. I should mention that. But this particular one is front-wheel drive only, as most of the Siennas were. Simply a cheaper setup and obviously a bit more fuel efficient. And for 90% of driving, you just don't need the all-wheel drive. Front-wheel drive will suffice perfectly. 2 other things I noticed while driving. The steering's very light. It's an electric power steering rack, so it's very easy to use, very easy to place where exactly you are on the road. Very good system. You don't get a lot of feedback, but for your average Joe, perfectly fine. Easy to place, light, exactly what you would want in a daily driver. I will say the gas pedal is shockingly responsive. It's like very peppy, like right off the line. You just kind of dip your foot into it very quickly and it like jumps forward. It's definitely got enough power to pass people on the highway. It's not a rocket ship by any means, but you can very quickly get up to highway speeds and over if you want to. Though of course, legally I have to say, don't go over the speed limit. That's obviously bad. The cops will catch you. You have to pay a fine. Insurance will go up, yada, yada, yada. Don't do it. It's much better to stay at the speed limit. Now, I want to quickly mention the options list that you got with this vehicle. There wasn't a whole lot that interested me. There were a few things like towing. You can get some stuff for towing. You can get floor mats that are all-weather certified, whatever, yada, yada, yada. I already mentioned the leather seats, which were a $2,000 option. You did get some rather peculiar options. You could opt to have an ashtray, which was a $26 option, called the ashtray kit, and you got an ashtray with it. So if you're a heavy smoker, you had to pay the extra $26 to get an ashtray. And then there were various other options for the satellite navigation system. That was, I think, $1,000 roughly. And then you could get some entertainment options for the second row seats. So you could get a DVD player that would be located in the middle in the ceiling, or you could get sort of back of the driver and passenger seat mounted infotainment systems for the rear seats. But those were both very expensive options. I think the seat mounted ones were close to $2,000, and the middle, sort of in the ceiling mounted ones, were sort of $1,500. Which back in the day I might have gone for the DVD player that was mounted in the middle. For 90% of people who simply just don't care about driving dynamics, it's a great car. It'll get you from place to place basically every single time you start it, because it's a Toyota and these things run forever. You'll get decent gas mileage, definitely better than what you'll get in your full-sized SUV with their massive 17-liter V1,000,000 engines. Whereas this just has the engine from a Toyota Camry, which, you know, will last forever and get decent fuel economy. So it's the best of both worlds. Those things aside, the rather large blind spot, the bad Bluetooth, and the cheap plastic that is throughout the interior, it's a very good daily driver. I would highly recommend this to anyone who's looking for a daily driver nowadays and wants to save some money over a brand new vehicle, because these will last hundreds of thousands of miles. And yeah, great vehicle, highly recommend.